Hey there folks, how you doing today? Hope all is going well for you. Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a very short video. It's just something I kind of wanted to share with you folks. This pistol here is a CZ75B. I don't know what year this one was manufactured, but judging by the fact that it came with a assault weapons band style 10 round magazine, I'll show a close-up of that for those of you that aren't familiar with them. But back between the years of 94 and 2004, all magazines had to be limited to 10 rounds. And this one was done with an exaggerated floor plate, which prevents the loading of more than 10 rounds into it. Okay, something I'll share with y'all. While I was taking the photographs to accompany this video, I noticed right here on the side of the frame, there's a little proof mark and a 03. So I'm gonna go out on a limb. I haven't done any research, but I think maybe that is a year of manufacturing. Now, before we go any further, as I always like to show folks, this is a safe and empty weapon, empty magazine, and we don't have any ammunition for this pistol out here in our workspace. It's going to stay that way for this portion of the program. So this pistol does not belong to me. It belongs to a friend of mine who purchased it from another friend of mine. And almost immediately after he purchased it, he told me, he said, the sights on this pistol are no good. I'm having trouble seeing them with my older eyes. Here's a close-up of what the sights looked like. What I believe you're looking at is some kind of phosphorescent paint that was applied from the factory on those sights. Kind of an early glow sight. They would have had to be charged with some form of either natural or artificial light in order to glow. I have seen such things before, but typically on a weapon like that, if you hit them with a flashlight for a second, they would glow for a couple of minutes afterwards. You would have been able to use that in a pinch, but they really don't hold a candle to a modern tritium sight. So that's what we did. We put a set of these Ameriglow tritium sights on this pistol. I'll try to show you a close-up here. This, in my opinion, this is the very best setup for the set of duty sights. You'll notice that it's got a serrated rear sight with black ringed tritium inserts. And on the front there, you've got a bright orange dot with a tritium source on it as well. So in low light or no light situations, you have 3 bright tritium dots. But during daytime applications, all you have to look for is that bright orange dot that sticks out there in the front, and it minimizes distraction with the rear sight. And it doesn't work for everyone, but I really like sight setups like this. This is a very clean, pseudo-vintage copy of a vintage firearm. The CZ75, of course, came out back in 75 or thereabouts, and saw quite a bit of use in the European theater as a police and military style weapon. It was never really heavily accepted over here as something that was used by police or military for widespread usage. But anyway, enough yammering about it. I got the sight swapped out. It was very simple to do so. Simply a drift adjustable rear sight. This replacement to the factory original does have a set screw. The factory original did not. And to remove the front sight, just simple drift out a roll pin, drift the sight forward, and reassemble in reversed order. Very simple to change them. I'm not going to show a video of how I did that on here, because that tends to get these videos throttled down by the oppressive regime that reviews the content that we post on here. I've seen that time and again. If it's not something that fits their liking, they turn down the volume on it. So we're just going to leave it alone. But I'll go over with you real quick a couple of features about this pistol. One is the double action, single action setup of this pistol. Very similar to a Beretta 92 FS for guys that are familiar with that. Some of you younger fellas that have only been around in the striker fired age might not be familiar with how a double action, single action trigger works. So I'll show you here real quick. Alright, so real quick, let me show you a close-up of how this trigger on this pistol works. Again, before we go any further, safe and empty weapon. You'll notice in this position the hammer is cocked, the trigger is in single action mode. Now you'll see there's a considerable amount of take up in front of that trigger before you hit the wall, and then a nice crisp break. The hammer drops, and now the trigger sits much further forward and is in double action mode. The trigger can be fired this way, albeit it's a very long and heavy trigger pull. Now, typically with a pistol like this, they were intended to be carried with the hammer down on a loaded chamber, at which point the first round fired would have that long, purposeful trigger pull after the action would cycle and the trigger was released. You'll notice that it stays in the rearward position, and then the follow-up trigger pulls would be in single action mode, very much like a Beretta 92. Basically, the thought process with that was you have a really long and purposeful first trigger pull, so you're less likely to unintentionally pull the trigger on that first round, and the subsequent rounds pre-cocked are much easier to get your rounds on target with. So you do have to be aware that there is that difference in trigger pull from the first round to the follow-up shots. One difference with a pistol like this as opposed to a Beretta 92 FS is there's no decocker on this pistol. So if you wanted to load the chamber of the pistol and then decock the hammer, you'd have to put your thumb back here on the hammer, pull the trigger, release the trigger, and then ride it forward in order to place the hammer in this kind of half cock configuration. Some guys preferred to just carry them cocked and locked, and I guess that's okay, but I think the added benefit of having the hammer at rest really is a safer way to carry it. I'm sure somebody's disagreeing with that already, and that's okay. But anyway, I'll show you a couple of close-ups here. This pistol has a very cool olive drab finish to it. The grips show virtually no wear and look like they could have been put on this thing last week. Really, the only parts of the pistol that showed any signs of wear at all were the locking areas of the barrel, and then of course those battered phosphorescent painted sights that just had seen better days. That stuff was flaking off and really wasn't much account. But we took care of that and took it out to the range, and for the most part, when I did my part, I was able to very easily make hits on a 12-inch plate at 25 yards. I'll show you the good, the bad, and the ugly here. I do not like the trigger pull on this pistol. It's got a lot of slap to it. So when you pull the trigger and the hammer is resetting itself, there is a lot of forward pressure placed on the face of the trigger that after about a box or so of shells, I noticed that my finger was starting to get kind of sore from that. So something to be aware of. Also, I shot Winchester White Box and Remington UMC 115 grain full metal jackets through it. Had zero issues with any feeding of ammunition. I did have 2 occasions where the trigger did not reset, and I don't know if it was just because of the way I was manipulating it or if it was an issue with the spring inside the pistol. But yeah, twice out of 100 rounds or so that I shot, it reset to a dead trigger. So I'm going to have to let him know about that. It might be something as simple as a trigger spring. I do not know. Again, it is an older pistol, and sometimes on older stuff, you have to do a little maintenance. So we'll go forward from there, but I wanted to share this with you. If you have one of these, if you ever wanted one of these, or if you have a story to tell about one of these, drop a line in the comments section down below. If you got anything out of this, give us a like. And as always, thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.